Good evening. You're listening to 90.9 FM, WMPG Gorham, Portland, Southern Maine Community Radio from USM. We are USM's radio station. My name is DJ BC, aka Brickmason, and you're listening to Joy Noise. Tonight, I've got a really interesting lineup. I'm talking to a lot of different, actually not too many different. One artist, one label, both of them phenomenal, and I also have a guest mix from Kratzwerk coming up later. But yeah, trying to have an awesome vapor show, bring in some voices, have people talk about themselves and what they're doing, talk about the scene a little bit. And for this portion of the show, I've got Angel Marcloid, aka Fire Tools, aka Mindspring Memories. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so first, just want to give you the space and the time to introduce yourself a bit.
Oh, okay. Let's see. How would I describe
People are driving around
myself?
Portland, Maine, and they don't know very much about the scene, and they've never heard of you before. And how would you introduce yourself?
Well, my name's Angel, and I would say first and foremost, I'm a musical artist. I play a bunch of instruments, and I make music using computers mostly. I have a couple different projects, Fire Tools, Mindspring Memories, Non-Local Forecast, and a bunch of others that go inactive and become active, like back and forth, depending on how I'm feeling. And I'm also a mixing and mastering engineer, and I have my own full-time business where I do that all day. I used to do it every day, but now I let myself have weekends off. And I've worked on hundreds of records in the past couple years from various artists in the I don't know, I would say experimental music scenes, but definitely not limited to that. I've mixed and mastered some like jazz fusion records and some punk records and all kinds of different things. I mostly work with music that's, unique or boundary pushing in some way.
For the absolute amateur who doesn't know the difference, like me in December, like literally, what's the difference between mixing and mastering, and how do those two kind of work together?
Well, they work together really well. They're made for each other, really. Mixing is where you're taking multiple different sound sources and basically mixing them together, but it's a lot more complicated than just making each element a certain volume and having them overlap. It's there's a lot of different tools I use and a lot of intuition and to make things not just fit together, but just like function together, work off of each other. Anyone who's made music with someone else or even by themselves or probably have done some form of mixing before. Even in your music, you're mixing voice clips with synthesizers, so that's essentially mixing. And mastering is most of the time when you take the final mix that is, all fit together already and just adding the finishing touches on all of it at once, refining it, making it, loud enough and it's not really for fixing a mix. You try to avoid that. Any problems in a mix you want to fix in the mix, but once in a while mastering can tackle like certain issues that might be in a mix. It's really about small moves and just little bits of clarity and refinement and balance and cohesion. And a big part of it is getting multiple songs that are on the same release to fit together and sound like they're all on the same album. But really a good master depends very much on a good mix. And the better the mix is, the less needs to be done in mastering. However, mastering, in my opinion, is always necessary to some extent, whether you're just kind of doing an amateur version of it yourself or hiring a professional. Unless it's just, like a demo, you're just like, trying to produce a demo, just getting
Mhm.
getting some people to hear what you're up to. You might not necessarily need mastering for that, but anything that gets released out into the world needs to be mastered.
Anybody listening in right now, here in Portland, Maine, we have listeners from Southern Maine, Northern Maine, but here in Portland, we have Robert Ludwig, who lives here and I think has made this his home for a long time. He's very, very famous in the field for he's the one very famous, most famously for like mastering and I think mixing like the Led Zeppelin cuts back in when they first came out, and the mix was so hot on cheap turntables that they made new ones before they realized, oh, that was a good mix, and now those are like very much looked after. So when you find like old Led Zeppelin records in the record store, you want to look for like the RL, Robert Ludwig on like the wax. So yeah, we have a bit of that culture here. He still does that work. It's very, very expensive, I understand, because he's like multiple Grammy nominee.
Yeah, I mean he's legendary. He's one of the people that, people like me look up to and have learned from. Um, but he definitely has a different style than I have and a lot of people have. I mean, he started doing it in the early days of rock music, and so we approaches things very differently. But he's still, he's still a lot better than me and could teach me a lot,
Not
I'm
better,
sure.
but I think especially like there's just that the analog mastering expertise that like I don't know if there's very much of that happening these days compared to like digital mastering of projects. But I don't know much about that though. That's just my kind of feel about that.
I mean, most people are mostly digital these days, but there's a lot of engineers out there that utilize analog equipment in line with digital equipment.
Yeah. Um,
I don't use much analog at all. If anything, I'm doing analog emulation, and
mhm.
most people don't know the difference when they're listening back. So
Yeah, and also, did you see like the news recently how high who is it, MoFi just got like in massive huge trouble? Did you see about that?
no, I didn't.
So
Were they
MoFi
claiming analog when they were using digital?
since like 2014. So if you buy their stuff, they're always on like Reddit, like the vinyl subreddit, but like they sell out really quickly. Some of their like cuts are like very expensive, but they've always been like we master from like the original. And since a while now, they this is like 3, 4 days ago, and it just came out that like oh, it's actually digital. It wasn't, and the funny thing is that it was not like detectable by audiophiles. That's part of the
Hmm.
conversation of people making fun of audiophiles, but it came out because I think there was a German YouTube channel that was like, how are they doing 40,000 pressings of the original Michael Jackson? It's gonna like mess up the way that you create like I don't know as much about it, but the way that you create, let's say the lacquers, or let's say like those from the original masters, they were saying that like it's gonna like seriously degrade those original things if they're doing it how they say that they're doing it on their website, and there's no way that they are. And then some investigation thereafter, including like tours of the facility where they do it. This just came out like 3 days ago, and the people working there are like, yeah, we're actually like very high quality still, but like there's going to be, I think, some lawsuits out of that because you can't advertise fully analog and then not be. It
Yeah,
sounds
that's
very
true.
similar, but
Yeah, that doing things fully analog is really important to some people. And I'll go out on a limb and say that's a bit silly because I
yeah,
think what matters is if it sounds good.
yeah,
And yeah, it's not really detectable by most people, even audiophiles.
yeah.
I mean, you might be able to listen to like a single instrument that's run through all analog equipment and then a single instrument that was processed by all digital equipment that wasn't trying to emulate the analog sound, and then you might be able to tell the difference. Some people will be able to tell the difference. I can tell the difference in a lot of cases, but you know, most of the time it just doesn't matter.
That's the kind of stuff that I would love to learn more about, especially like I think that would like have an influence on the music and my music making process, I think, if I knew more about it. But back to you, because I want to talk about yourself and your music. Your my favorite alias that you have is Angel Wings Marmalade. It's like the most pleasant alias that you've created, I think.
God,
Um,
I'm surprised to hear that.
I like love that name so much. Um,
I
but
got it from a lyric from a Jeremy Enoch song, who is the singer and guitar player for Sunny Day Real Estate.
okay, that's very neat.
Hmm.
Um, so please release more under that alias, just so I can see it like at Bull Moose, because some of your stuff is in Bull Moose, which is a record store here in the East Coast. Through Needle Juice, I think that they stock records here, but
Hmm.
I think the two that people are most familiar with, especially listeners, are probably Fire Tools, probably Mindspring Memories. Can you
Hmm.
characterize the music of Fire Tools, that project? And I think you've been making music under that alias since 2015, and that's probably gotten the most critical. Like I came across your music and you through Pitchfork,
Hmm.
covering like basically every Fire Tools release.
Yeah, pretty much every, well, not the first one and not the third one, but I think that they've covered everything else. Yeah, it's hard to categorize because I think one of the main aspects of it that stand out to people is how much of a I mean, some say clash and others say mix of different styles of music. I pretty much just incorporate everything that I like. I see no reason to stick to a genre.
Hmm.
I'm doing everything from like jazz fusion and new age music to black metal and death metal and metalcore to, ambient and noise, avant-garde kind of
Hmm.
soundscapes and stuff. And I kind of all throw them all together to make, I guess, a unique sound. Although my goal isn't to be unique in any way, I'm just kind of doing what I want to do, but it ends up coming out kind of interesting because there will be some songs that have really kind of beautiful sounding synths akin
Hmm.
to like maybe early 90s or 80s new age music with jazz theory incorporated into the writing, but then there will be like really harsh screamed vocals over it, and which is really jarring and weird to a lot of people. I mean, it was jarring and weird to me when I first started doing it, but it was very natural for me to start making music like that. It started happening when I just let go of all interest in trying to make a certain kind of thing and stick to a certain kind of genre, and just kind of made what was coming like straight from my heart center. And that's how that's what happened. Fire Tools happened
I can
from
recommend just like if I can recommend just one song to somebody looking for something that's maybe like less harsh on that. The harshness is amazing, but like Shadowfax, which is a track off of like Skinless, I think that's the first record that I really came across, and especially Shadowfax is just like a really gorgeous song off of that.
Thank you. I really like that one too. It's one of my favorites. It's actually my favorite record of mine.
Yeah.
I I mean it definitely has its pitfalls, but for some reason, it's just the most important one to me so far. And I've finished two records that haven't even come out yet. And I can still say that Skinless X1 is my favorite.
That's very nice. What's the title from, if you don't mind me asking? Was it inspired by
Well, a
your
lot of titles and names of things, I usually combine different things into one. So Skinless X1, um, Skinless is a kind of a reference to how I feel out in public. It's kind of
Mhm.
about like anxiety and things like that. But Skinless is also more or less a death metal band that I don't actually like love them a particular amount. Um, they're not high up on my list, but it's kind of like I kind of wanted to reference them a little bit. And then the X1, well, there's a Rush uh, song or series of songs called Cygnus X1. It's like a sort of a sci-fi
Mhm.
quasi-spiritual type philosophy kind of story. And Skinless sounds like Cygnus sort of, so it's kind of like a play on words. And yeah, that's how the title was put together.
The title of that makes me think of, I don't know why, but like the Mars Volta has like Vismund Cygnus, which maybe itself is like a reference to it if you know that song. It's off of I think it's off of which other records is that off of?
Not sure. I'm not as familiar with Mars Volta as I should be. I mean, I
No, no,
figure
there's
being
no
like
should
a
be. There's no should be. It's off of Francis the Mute, but there's no should be.
well, I only say that because I'm like a huge fan of prog and like experimental music, and I loved At the Drive-In. So, I just for some reason I just never really got deep into Mars Volta. But the word Cygnus, it's Cygnus X1 is the name of a black hole that exists
Okay.
or is theory to exist. And that's where Rush got the name. And I figure that Mars Volta probably was referencing that too.
Would you consider like what my question for like your two different aliases that I'm really focusing on are like entry points, but for anyone listening in, would you consider Skinless X1 as a pretty good entry point for your music, especially one that you're passionate about?
Um,
Or is there one
Even
that you
though
think
it's
is
my
more
favorite record, I don't know if I would consider it. Well, I don't know. Any of my records could be a good entry point depending on what you're into. I think my most recent Eternal Home is more representative of where I am now, which is probably like 10 times as diverse as Skinless X1 is,
Mhm.
despite its heavy diversity. I think if somebody wants to get a really good idea of like what I'm up to, I think Eternal Home would be a good one. But Skinless X1 is great, and that's a fine entry point. I mean, yeah, it just really depends.
Touching on like album art for a second, that's a question I have for later on, but like you really incorporate like metal, you know what I mean? Like metal font or metal text
Yeah,
quite a
yeah.
bit.
I mean, I grew up on like death metal bands and extreme metal bands, so I'm a huge fan of all of the unreadable logos and
I
things
mean,
like
you even
that.
have like the bucket hat. I remember that you have like the your name on there with that. I just really love that.
Yeah, that's my main logo. I actually just changed it for my most recent stuff, but I actually like kind of decided against the most recent logo, and I'm gonna go back to the old one with a few tweaks after the one that'll come out in like February.
The one I'm looking at on the bucket hat, is that like, do you draw that yourself, or is there like a metal text generator online, or do you commission that, or how do artists even get that?
Oh,
'Cause
that was definitely commissioned. I wouldn't trust any metal text generators because they're just gonna use like fonts probably.
I assume so, yeah, but
Yeah, this was hand drawn by a pretty famous logo artist. His name is Christoph, and I don't really know how to say his last name because he's German,
yeah,
but it's like,
most of that is like very Eastern European, I feel.
yeah, it's like SPADJZ something or other. I
Yeah,
always forget. No disrespect to the guy. I
yeah,
mean, I've been commissioning for him for stuff forever, but I mean, his probably most famous logo is the Emperor logo, who's like a
yeah.
really legendary metal band. So yeah, he's been doing logos for people forever. And I had him do my new one too.
Anyone listening in, the show after mine every other week is actually like a metal show. It's a 2 hour like metal show. Just in case you like metal and you're listening in, there's not a lot of it here in Portland in terms of radio, but like yeah, every 2 Sundays there's a show here, 9 to 11 at the station, and it's just pure metal. It's amazing. Um, moving
That's
into I think
great.
yeah, yeah, we need more than on the radio, you know.
Yeah, and this guy's probably designed logos for a lot of the bands that get played on there. I just want to say real quick because I feel bad for not getting his last name right on air. So I
Yeah,
looked it up. It's Szpajdel, which is like impossible for someone whose native language is English to be able to know how to pronounce right offhand. But I just wanted to say that so I can honor the guy.
yeah, it's a beautiful last name. I think a lot of our names tend to be kind of simple in
Yeah,
English
they're
and
kind of dumb.
kind of dumb, but his is fantastic though. Your other alias, and I say other, but you have like 40 aliases. But focusing on just the Fire Tools, the Mindspring Memories. How would you characterize the Mindspring Memories? Which this show is kind of like focused on vaporwave. Every 2 weeks, I'm doing this, and that's probably the alias that's most well known, I think, in the scene that we associate with yourself.
Yeah, so Mindspring Memories is essentially vaporwave, specifically classic style of vaporwave, which is wholly sample based, and it's an offshoot of classic style vaporwave called slush wave. When I started making it, I didn't really think of it as that, but I sort of tried to follow in Telepath's footsteps by making really moody, sort of
Mm-hmm.
ambient, really effect driven or heavily processed, you could say, sample based vaporwave in order to create like really like beautiful or moody or somber or fantasy like um vibes, I guess.
I have a
So
release on like underwater computing next year, but like it's a little thing I made that's also incredibly inspired by Telepath, but trying to make it very much my own and not like trying to copy other artists. But
mhm.
Telepath for me is like a huge name in the field for anyone listening in. Slushwave is like you can think of it like ambient, but a little different, like sample based ambient. If I'm not wrong on that.
Yeah, I mean, it can have really strong beats and rhythms and stuff. So usually when I think about ambient as a genre, I kind of think about, drumless and
Yeah.
just kind of minimal and really atmospheric. So with Slush Wave, I would say that it has like tendencies of the ambient genre and the way that the music is processed and everything, but it can have like, I mean, most of it has drums and rhythms and structure and stuff like that. So
And Telepath had like some like really spaced apart like clapping, or like there's a pretty distinct like kind of Telepath sound to that backbeat for me, that when I hear it, like I know that that's who that is.
yeah, exactly. I mean, his sound is unmistakable. All of his old sample-based stuff, there's
Yeah.
absolutely nothing like it. And yeah, I was never trying to actually like copy him, but I was taking a lot of pointers from him as far as like how I use delay and reverb and phaser and other modulation effects and all kinds of things. But yeah, he's definitely got his own sound. There's certain effects he uses that I intentionally avoid because I just I want to I want to do my own thing. I'm not always concerned with doing my own thing, but when it comes to like Slushwave and me being such a huge fan of his, I
Mhm.
intentionally try to like make sure I have a signature sound and I'm not just ripping him.
I feel like you've released maybe like the most music as Mindspring Memories, at least since like 2014, that alias has been around. Am I right about that?
You could
That made other
probably
things later.
say that. I mean, I've released a ton of stuff in like the noise territory years ago, probably more of that stuff than I've released of Mindspring. But um as far as active projects, yeah, definitely. It's definitely the most prolific.
I think people will probably see like in shops around town here, like the Binary Ocean is on cassette and vinyl, but it's a gorgeous like the vinyl is gorgeous, the three different colors. Like it's the album art works well, the pressing works well, but that's probably the one that's most well known because we have it in shops around town here. But you think that's a pretty good like entry point, or a pretty good project
Yeah,
to
I
really
would
tell
say
people
that's a
about?
pretty good entry point. The only thing I think that might be off-putting to some people is that the first two songs are so incredibly long that they take up two sides of an entire record. Um, but you know, if you don't like long songs, there's shorties on that album, and I have, you know, other
Yeah.
albums that I put out around that time that have some shorter songs. But I was really going for a just a very sort of like hypnotic, repetitive
Hmm.
kind of thing. And it's a shame that records only hold, you know, between 22, 24 minutes per side or so. Because it really sucks to have to chop those songs in half, but
Yeah. Do you know,
that's how it goes.
do you know the microphones, Phil Elverum?
Oh yeah, I
So
love all that stuff.
his not maybe not his newest, but like Microphones in 2020, one of his projects. It's a 46 minute long track. I've
Awesome.
seen him perform it here live. Like we had him here in Portland this year, and it's a 46 minute long track. There's a
Wow,
weird guy
that's
that
really
sings
cool.
behind him, and this weird, strange man comes out and plays like death metal riffs at certain points, and then he sinks back into the shadows. But yeah, on the record, he has to fade out, fade in, fade out, fade in,
Yeah.
the three sides of the which is probably disappointing to have to do, but um,
Well, that's what you got to do for
yeah,
people who love vinyl. On a CD, you know, you got 80 minutes. You don't really have to do
that's
that. And obviously, digital, you have even more freedom.
cassettes. Can you do 90 minutes per side on a cassette, or is that 90 split between two?
No, I think the longest cassettes that you can really find are probably 120-minute cassettes, which means you have an hour on each side, just about.
Yeah, that makes
They're
sense.
harder to find now, but back when I was running a cassette label, they weren't so hard to find.
Yeah. Um, I guess for the next question, I was going to mention just briefly like album art. Like some people will start projects with an album art and then make the music, or they'll make the music then the album art. But what's your approach to that? Or obviously, it's you. I think you've released like probably 180 records, if I had to guess, maybe like 120. But generally, what's your thoughts about that for your own production?
Well, I can't say every release I've ever put out I was super concerned with album art, and I honestly regret any time that I wasn't concerned with it. Album art is really important to me. Especially with Fire Tools, I kind of consider album art, lyrics, if any, or if not lyrics, then just like the message or the song titles, and then the music to be kind of like a holy trinity. Um, I mean, the music gets the most effort, but I feel like all three of those things like work together to make the big picture. So I'm always kind of like perpetually disappointed if people don't care much about lyrics, and most people don't, from what I've learned. Um, and album art, yeah, it's really important. I want it to represent the music and the message in some way. And mostly with Fire Tools, I'm kind of going for something like kind of specific with the art most of the
Yeah.
time. Um, and with Mindspring, I've kind of slacked here and there on the art. I think like some labels have released some stuff for me with art that I wasn't a huge fan of, and I kind of just like, for the sake of making things go like easy, I kind of just let it go. And like I said, I really regret that now. But now I don't really let myself get away with art that I don't love. It's really important.
Have you ever made the art yourself, or have you always kind of tended to like lean on friends who make the cover art, or like?
Well, I used to make my own art like most of the time. Like the first couple Fire Tools albums, I made that art, but I've been hiring people ever since because there are other people that can create what I'm going for a lot better than I can. I think the majority of the Mindspring art actually I made mostly old stuff. Now in the past couple of years, it's mostly made by somebody else that I hire that the label puts together. But I've made most of it. My art style tends to be collage based, like internet collage.
Yeah.
I'm not even a 3D like a Blender person. I would love to be, and I could be if I put some effort forth, but I haven't. But I go after artists who use Blender or 3D art programs because that's really like the look that I'm going for.
That's very neat. A couple more questions, I guess. Electronicon 3 is taking place this week. The show is airing on Sunday. It all kind of starts up the 19th with the tape swap. The 20th is going to be the shows, and the 21st there's going to be like some kind of like after events. Sadly, I can only attend the tape swap because there's a big family event taking place on the 20th, which is a very happy event. But you performed at Electronicon 1. Did they call it 1 or just Electronicon?
I think they just called it Electronicon. I don't think there will. I mean, maybe there were plans to do a second one.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure.
What was that
Um,
like, playing at that, and what kind of music did you play, and how electronic musicians, I think, have that difficulty of like maybe they don't have as much to do with their hands on stage if so much of it is post-production, like computer-based music, But if I can have you just,
yeah.
what was that like, Electronic on 1?
Well, it's quite impossible for me to um be incredibly hands-on with Fire Tools live performances. And it was Fire Tools that performed that. So when I perform live, there's a lot of stuff that's a backing track, and then I play guitar or synth over it. I trigger some sounds, and I do a lot of vocal processing live, and that keeps me really busy. It would be just way too stressful and way too much work for me to try to make what you hear on a record happen live if I had control over every single sound. It wouldn't even be possible. I'd need a team of people, and even then it might not be possible because it needs to all be synced up with the videos I project.
Yeah.
Like, note for note, there are things that happen in the videos at the exact second that they happen in the songs, and the videos are all pre-made. So it kind of has to be that way. Playing at Electronicon was really awesome. I met a lot of cool people. I got to meet Telepath. It turns out he's an alien, which is really cool. Um, and some other people that I've talked to online. But honestly, it was a really stressful day. I rolled in a little bit late. I drove from Chicago to New York by
Mhm.
myself, and there were certain like stipulations that artists had to adhere to because of the venue and the sort of erratic schedule. So that made it pretty damn stressful. It was it was a really stressful day. But I also have a really hard time with crowds, which is ironic because I play music.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I was doing everything myself that day. Or actually, I did pay my friend Dahlia to keep an eye on merch for some of the day.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was quite a whirlwind. but my experience was, not representative of the experience of the average attendee. I mean, it it was at the same time like so much fun. And in the main room, the bigger stage where George Clanton played, and Negative Gemini, who's now Negi Jemmy. And
Mhm.
I mean, it was amazing. It was beautiful. It was overwhelming. It was very special. I really think that George Clanton is I don't like to use the word genius, but I'm going to right now. I think he is in a way, um, not just with music, but just kind of like marketing and
Mhm.
making things happen and doing his own thing. It's really something special.
Um, you said that you're not attending Electronicon 3, is that right?
Yeah, probably not. I have so much work. I have so much going on here. I have, pets, and I live alone. And it's just with everything going on, it would be really difficult to do. Now, if I was playing, and obviously performers, they have like a fee that
Yeah.
they get, and that would cover travel and all the labor and their time away from their day jobs and stuff. So I think if I was playing and the situation was right, I might be able to make it work. But simply attending, um yeah, I can't really go out of town and attend anything right now. um
What are your thoughts about Electronicon 3, whether it's I don't know, lineup or
well, it looks like the best one yet. I mean, the lineup is just like, it's insane. Like every time they updated the flyer, I was like,
yeah,
wow, like
yeah.
I wish I was there. I wish I was a part of this. It would have been really great. It's going to be really memorable, and it's a really important event, I think, for the scene. And yeah, I wish I could be there. I hope to see a lot of videos
I don't get
and
to be there. Whoever gets to be there is very lucky, but I'll be at the
yeah.
flip swap. I'm hoping to like put my little logo like on a hat so people can like look at me and recognize me maybe and like try to meet some friends that I'm trying to plan to see them. But I think the first one people said that was the first time that the scene ever came together and they could like meet each other for the first time. That was the importance, I think, of that first one.
Yeah, I would agree. It was definitely the first, or if not one of the first, like vaporwave centered events. I mean, the people have DJ'd vaporwave. There've been a
Yeah.
few vaporwave artists that have done, shows on their own. But yeah, it's definitely pivotal for the scene. And there's not really a whole lot of other ones, even though it's been a couple of years, and
Mhm.
100% Electronica is on their third one. There's still nothing like it out there. If
There's some
anything, there's a lot
smaller,
of good live events
yeah.
online, like live streams and stuff. But
Yeah, like the Slushwave Festival was really nice recently.
mhm.
I see like in Philadelphia, there's like some things going on here and there. In Boston, I think that there was something. I think Pat Jennington maybe did like a thing in Boston, I feel like. Um,
Yeah, he's done
couple
things a few times. He was talking to me about doing something in Chicago a while ago, but I don't think that happened because of COVID.
Makes sense, yeah. And anyone listening in, masks are required at the tape swap. They're not at the music festival part of it, but there's lots of encouragement to do so. It hasn't been talked about at all, but like COVID's still wilding out, and I guess monkeypox is, but it's gonna be a lot of fun. People should wear masks and try to be safe and be respectful. Um, just to throw that PSA out there. So yeah. Final question. If you don't mind, I asked you to put together like a mix. You obliged. It's a really neat mix. Do you remember what you put on there? Or you mean to help you out a bit, or want to have
Oh
you?
gosh. Yeah, I put it together about like right when you asked me.
Yeah, the first two tracks and the final two tracks are your own. I recall you saying that you included some Telepath, a band called DAD. I've never heard of before. Some Bart Kraft, I think, and you had said that it was like very 80s synthwave based. The playlist, not necessarily like all vaporwave, but very kind of
You vaporwave adjacent. I mean, people who
Jason.
like vaporwave would probably enjoy the non-vaporwave tracks. And yeah, I pulled up the mix just now, so now I'm remembering what's on there. Um, yeah, the first and second track actually is me, and then I put stuff in the middle that wasn't me, and then the last two tracks are me.
Who's DAD? Is that pronounced dad, or how do you
It's probably DAD. I don't know. It's gosh, I forget. I don't remember his name. Um Yeah, he's a really, really talented musician that does a whole lot of stuff that's not just that project. I know that he's like a studio musician, a session musician, and the
Mhm.
crazy thing is one of his main collaborators, and this is just a total coincidence, happens to be a guy that when I was like in my single digits and early double digits was playing music with. Um, so basically, I did a remix of a DAD song once, and I sent it to him, and I don't know how we got on the subject, but it turns out that yeah, one of his main collaborators is my friend from when I was 10,
Really?
from the opposite side of the country, which is
That's
really
wild.
crazy. So I ended up contacting him again and sort of talking about old times. But yeah, he's extremely talented. I know he makes other music, though I'm not super familiar with it.
Very
Um,
cool.
but
So,
yeah, he's his that release I got that song from is available on his Bandcamp. It's like D/A/D.
again, anybody listening in, this is an awesome, fantastic interview with Angel Marcloid. Marcloid?
Yeah, that works.
Sorry. AKA Fire Tools, AKA Mindspring Memories, also doing some incredible mixing, mastering work under Angel Hair Audio. Where can people find you, and what are you working on right now, and what's going on with you right now?
Well, I'm on Twitter and Instagram. I have accounts for Fire Tools and then another account that's just personal. Angelmarkloid.com is like my main website, and that kind of acts as like a central hub where you can find links to like my, all of my work basically. There's a bio and photos and stuff there. Um, and I would say that angelhairaudio.com is my website for my business. So if anybody needs any mixing or mastering work done, they can get a hold of me there. Yeah, just type my name into Google. A bunch of stuff will come up, so I'm not
And
hard to find.
just to jump in, anyone listening in, like even just the very first email I wrote you when I was a bigger, dumber idiot than I am now, it was just like a long, like 6 paragraph, detailed, like there's a lot of passion and sincerity, I think, and your the way you speak to others and your communications and your approach to music. And I just like very, very, very teaching based. I know that's not, and that was your intention, I want to say, but
Yeah.
anyone who's considering like I guess collaborating with you, like I've learned a lot through the process, and I've really really appreciated it. And again, like long, detailed paragraphs. The communication's been phenomenal, and I've learned a lot from working with you, and just really appreciate that again.
Yeah, you're welcome. I do tend to be pretty wordy when it comes to stuff I'm excited about, and that annoys some people, and other people really enjoy it. So I'm glad you enjoyed it.
It'd be concerning if you were underwordy. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I
not
feel really strongly about details, and I feel like they're really important, and I don't like to leave them out for the sake of being quick.
yeah.
So
So again, thanks so much. The mix is going to come in right now. Thanks again so much for speaking with me.
yeah, no problem. It was awesome. Thank you. Hello, this is Angel Marcloid, and here is a mix of vaporwave or vaporwave adjacent music that I have made, that other people have made, that I wish I had made, and that I'd never be able to make if I tried. Enjoy.